The carbon dating was off. Terribly, impossibly off, Zeiler, lead xenoarchaeologist, muttered, adjusting his optical array. The multifaceted lenses whirred softly as he refocused on the etched symbols before him. These glyphs, they predate the oldest known Iridian settlements by millennia. He tapped a clawed finger against the cool, smooth surface of the chamber wall, the sound echoing in the newly opened space. The chamber itself was a marvel, a perfect sphere carved from the planet's ochre-colored bedrock. Dust motes, disturbed by the breaching of its millennia-long seal, danced in the harsh glare of the arc lamps. The air hung thick with the scent of mineral dust and something else, something ancient and indefinable, like the ghost of forgotten time. Intricate glyphs, glowing faintly with a residual luminescence, covered every inch of the walls, a silent, alien language whispering secrets to the void. Estelle, an Iridian of considerable renown in xenoarchaeological circles, felt a prickle of unease beneath her chitinous skin. This dig site, on a remote, unnamed planet designated only as LX-492 in the Galactic Registry, had initially seemed unremarkable, a routine survey before resource extraction began. Now, standing in this impossible chamber, she knew that everything had changed. "Run the dating sequence again, Thrax," she ordered, her voice crisp and professional. "Check for any possible contamination. I want a full spectrum analysis." Thrax, a hulking Gralak whose species was known for their meticulous lab work, grunted in acknowledgement. His thick fingers manipulated the controls of the portable dating unit, the device humming with barely suppressed energy. Hours crawled by as the team worked, the only sounds the hum of equipment and the occasional muttered curse. Finally, Thrax turned, his multi-lensed eyes wide with disbelief. "Estelle," he rumbled, his voice betraying his shock. "The second analysis confirms the initial findings. The chamber and the glyphs are approximately 70,000 years older than the oldest confirmed Iridian settlements." Estelle felt a chill run down her spine, despite the chamber's oppressive heat. 70,000 years, an impossible number. She immediately sent the raw data to the Galactic Archives, along with high-resolution scans of the glyphs, creating digital twins for cross-referencing. The Archives, a sprawling repository of galactic history and knowledge located on the neutral planet of Cygnus VII, was the final arbiter of historical truth. On Cygnus VII, Kyle Davis, a human historian working as a translator for the Galactic Archives, stared at the data stream flooding his console. He was a man worn down by bureaucracy and the endless task of translating dry historical texts. His small office, crammed with data spools and half-empty synth coffee cups, was his sanctuary. But as he reviewed Estelle's data, a spark of something akin to excitement flickered within him. He noticed discrepancies almost immediately. The glyphs, while undeniably alien, possessed a certain resonance. He cross-referenced them with existing historical records, sifting through millennia of galactic history. Then, almost as an afterthought, he compared them to images of extremely early human symbols, predating even Earth's first unified civilizations. He activated a secure comm channel to LX-492, his fingers flying across the console. "Estelle, this is Kyle Davis at the Galactic Archives. I've reviewed your data, the glyphs. They bear a superficial resemblance to some extremely early human symbols, but it's likely just coincidental. Humans weren't exactly galaxy-shaping back then." He ended the transmission with a dismissive snort. Estelle, still reeling from the implications of the dating results, frowned at Kyle's message. Humans. The galaxy's backwater species, known more for their tenacity than their historical significance. Still, the mention of similarities nagged at her. Dismissing Kyle's theory, she began to delve into the mythology surrounding the glyphs, cross-referencing them with various alien belief systems. She discovered something disturbing. The glyphs, when interpreted through the lens of these ancient mythologies, seem to describe advanced technologies and events that would have been impossible for a pre-spaceflight civilization. Descriptions of energy weapons, terraforming techniques, and even faster-than-light travel. Meanwhile, back on Cygnus VII, Kyle, driven by a nagging curiosity he couldn't quite suppress, secretly accessed restricted files within the galactic archives. Files related to ancient human civilizations, files that were supposed to be off-limits to all but the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council. He found references to similar glyphs, similar technologies, and something else, a record of the planet LX-492's location. The planet was marked as restricted in ancient human star charts, with handwritten notes in a language he barely recognized. After hours of painstaking translation, he deciphered the key phrase, seed. The notes referred to LX-492 as a seed. A seed of what? He didn't know, but the implications sent a shiver down his spine. Estelle, determined to unravel the mystery of the glyphs, sent a formal request to the Galactic Council for further resources and on-site investigation. She outlined her findings, emphasizing the potential historical significance of the discovery. The response arrived 3 days later, terse and dismissive. Request denied. The reason cited was budgetary constraints and a lack of demonstrable historical significance. Estelle, are you secure? Kyle's voice crackled through the encrypted comm channel, barely audible above the white noise. A pause, then Estelle's measured reply. Compromised, no. Irritated by paperwork, yes. What have you found, Kyle? Make it quick. Kyle took a breath, the hum of the Galactic Archive servers a constant drone in his ears. I've located the planet from your dig site in ancient human star charts. It's designated as restricted several levels above even quarantine zones. And there's a secondary designation, seed. Seed. Estelle echoed, a flicker of curiosity in her tone. What does that signify in this context? I'm sending you the charts now. Encrypted, of course. Don't want anyone else in the archives getting a peek at my extracurricular research. Kyle initiated the transfer, bypassing several layers of security protocols with practiced ease. The data stream flowed, invisible and untraceable, through the network. Minutes later, Estelle's voice returned, sharper now. These charts. They're unlike anything I've seen in the Iridian historical archives. The detail, the cross-referencing, and the planet's location. It's rich in resources that are now almost entirely depleted in this sector. Resources the Galactic Council claims were never there in significant quantities. My thoughts exactly, Kyle said grimly. That denial. It's starting to stink of a cover-up, Estelle. A big one. Agreed. Estelle's tone was decisive. I'm becoming increasingly concerned about the Council's insistence on downplaying the significance of the glyphs, and now this. I propose a covert joint investigation of this planet. Covert. Kyle raised an eyebrow even though she couldn't see him. That sounds risky, even for you. Necessity dictates action, Kyle. I can requisition a small, unmarked research vessel under the guise of a geological survey. It will raise minimal suspicion. We leave within the next cycle. The following hours were a blur of frantic preparations. Estelle, using her authority, secured the vessel, a compact, utilitarian craft designed for atmospheric and subsurface analysis. Kyle, meanwhile, purged his personal logs and prepared a cover story for his absence from the archives. Under the cloak of a routine maintenance cycle, they covertly boarded the vessel. The airlock hissed shut behind them, sealing them in their conspiracy. Estelle took the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Course plotted, trajectory masked with false data logs. ETA 12 standard hours. As the vessel broke orbit, Kyle monitored the sensors. Energy readings, unusual, emanating from the planet's surface, localized around the dig site. It's faint, but definitely there. 12 hours later, the planet loomed before them, a swirling canvas of ochre and crimson. They landed the vessel in a desolate canyon, several kilometers from the dig site to avoid detection. The hull plates shimmered, activating the camouflage system, blending the ship seamlessly into the surrounding rock. "Standard exploration gear," Estelle said, checking her pulse rifle. "And keep your comm open. We stick together." The trek to the dig site was uneventful, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots on the rocky terrain. As they approached the chamber, they found it seemingly abandoned, the archaeological equipment gone. However, a closer inspection revealed something unsettling. "The chamber entrance," Kyle murmured, running a gloved hand over the rough surface. "It's been resealed." Crudely with more recent materials, they didn't want anyone getting back in. Estelle produced a small cutting torch from her belt. "Then we won't disappoint them." With a hiss of superheated plasma, she sliced through the makeshift seal, revealing the dark maw of the chamber entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. The glyphs on the walls seemed to watch them, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. "Evidence of a secondary excavation," Estelle noted, her optical array scanning the floor. "Hurried, judging by the discarded tools and broken containers." Kyle moved deeper into the chamber, his gaze sweeping across the walls. "There," he said, pointing to a section of the wall that seemed slightly out of alignment. "A hidden compartment." With a grunt, he pried the panel open, revealing a small alcove. Inside, nestled amongst a tangle of wires and broken circuitry, was a data storage device partially destroyed, its casing cracked and scorched. "Can you recover anything?" Estelle asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Kyle carefully extracted the device, his fingers tracing the damaged circuits. "I can try, but it's going to be delicate." Hours passed as Kyle worked, his tools humming and clicking as he coaxed the damaged device back to life. Finally, with a sigh of relief, he straightened up. "I've managed to salvage something. Fragmented images mostly." And a text file. The images flickered across a holographic projector, glimpses of advanced technology, sleek ships, and towering cities unlike anything they had ever seen. Then the text file appeared, its words glowing with an eerie luminescence. "Warning," Estelle read aloud, her voice hushed. "This planet is a repository of dangerous, suppressed knowledge. Knowledge related to the ancient civilization of humanity. The technology contained here is not to be disturbed. Its power is beyond your comprehension." Kyle zoomed in on one of the images, his eyes widening. "That technology, it matches descriptions from ancient human records, records the Galactic Council deemed mythical and unreliable." "This tech is beyond that of the Galactic Council, Estelle." As they were examining the warning message, Estelle's hand shot up and pointed behind Kyle. "There is wreckage over there near the dig site." Kyle turned to look in the direction Estelle was pointing and saw the faint shimmer of metal in the distance. "That vessel is not of Iridian make, nor does it match any known galactic registry." The carbon dating was off. "Terribly, impossibly off," Zyler, lead xeno-archaeologist, muttered, adjusting his optical array. "These glyphs, they predate the oldest known Iridian settlements by millennia." Millennia. Estelle cleared her throat, the sterile hum of the lab momentarily amplifying the sound. Projected above the central table, the intricate glyphs shimmered in ethereal blue light. "As you can see," she began, her voice measured, "the initial readings suggested an anomaly. We recalibrated our instruments, ran multiple cross-validations, and consulted with chronometric specialists across the sector. The result remains consistent." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "These glyphs are at least 12,000 cycles older than any previously discovered Iridian artifact." A murmur rippled through the assembled team. Dr. Aris, a seasoned geologist, scoffed. "Impossible. The geological strata alone contradict that claim." "The strata have been re-evaluated, Aris," Estelle countered, her tone firm but respectful. "There are unexplained anomalies in the surrounding rock formations, suggesting some form of localized temporal distortion." We are still investigating that aspect. Across the galactic network, in the sprawling, dust-choked archives of the Galactic Council, Kyle Davis sifted through another stack of forgotten treaties. Sunlight filtered through the grimy plasteel windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. He overheard a hushed conversation between two archivists. Some crazy dating results. Iridian dig site. Older than the galaxy itself, practically. Kyle snorted, flipping through the brittle pages. Iridian exaggeration, he muttered under his breath. That's all it ever is. Always rewriting history to make themselves feel important. He'd heard it all before. Tales of lost civilizations, forgotten empires, ancient prophecies, all ultimately leading back to some self-serving Iridian narrative. Still, a nagging sense of curiosity tugged at him. 12,000 cycles. That was a significant margin for error. Meanwhile, in the towering, obsidian-clad chambers of the Galactic Council, Counselor Valerius addressed the assembled representatives. The Iridian claims, while currently unsubstantiated, present a potential challenge to the established galactic timeline. His voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, resonated with authority. We must proceed with caution. Any disruption to the accepted historical narrative could have destabilizing effects. A hulking Krogan delegate grumbled, "So what, we suppress the findings?" Valerius raised a hand, silencing the no-gan. "No, suppression is crude. We will simply monitor the situation, ensure that the Iridian research remains within acceptable parameters." Counselor Lyra, your department will oversee this matter. Back on the dig site, Estelle stared at the projected glyphs, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a specific sequence here," she murmured, tracing a finger across the holographic display, "that defies standard Iridian linguistic structure. It's almost archaic." She glanced at her assistant. "Contact the Galactic Archives." "I need a translator specimen, easing in. Unconventional linguistic patterns." The assistant nodded, already tapping at her datapad. "I'll put in a request. There's a human there, Davis, I think his name is. Supposedly has a knack for oddities." A few days later, Kyle found himself standing in Estelle's lab, the air thick with the smell of ozone and ancient dust. Estelle, her eyes intense, gestured towards the shimmering glyphs. "Mr. Davis, thank you for coming. We require your expertise." Kyle, initially unimpressed, leaned closer, his cynicism momentarily forgotten. The glyphs were different. They weren't the flowing, elegant script of the Iridians. These were angular, almost geometric. As he scanned the intricate patterns, a faint echo resonated within his mind. Something familiar buried deep within his subconscious. He pointed to a specific cluster of symbols. This resembles a stylized representation of the Orion constellation, an ancient human myth. Estelle's eyes widened. Human, but that's impossible. These glyphs predate human space travel by millennia. Kyle shrugged, a flicker of excitement igniting within him. Maybe, we've been wrong about human history all along. Suddenly, a chime echoed through the lab. Estelle tapped a control on her wrist, and a holographic image of a stern-faced Volus appeared. "Dr. Estelle," the Volus said, his voice clipped and formal, "Counselor Lyra requests your presence immediately. It concerns the sensitivity of your current research." Estelle exchanged a look with Kyle, a shared understanding passing between them. The council was tightening its grip. The holographic projection shimmered, displaying intricate glyph patterns. Estelle's voice, amplified but steady, filled the auditorium. "And therefore, the carbon dating discrepancies cannot be dismissed as mere anomalies. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests these glyphs predate established Iridian civilization by at least 3 millennia." A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled scientists. Some stroked their chin tendrils thoughtfully. Others exchanged skeptical glances. One elder, his carapace gleaming under the auditorium lights, scoffed audibly. "Preposterous," the elder muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Everyone knows the great galactic races predate the Iridians. Your analysis must be flawed, Doctor. Across the room, another scientist, a younger Iridian with bright, inquisitive eyes, leaned forward. But Dr. Vess, the isotopic ratios are consistent across multiple samples. Surely that warrants further investigation. The scene shifted to the Galactic Council chambers, a vast, circular room dominated by holographic projections of the member species representatives. The Iridian's findings are concerning, a Glarac, his voice a low rumble, stated. Such claims, if substantiated, could destabilize established galactic history. Another counselor, a slender, insectoid xyler, clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Indeed, we must ensure that the Iridian's research is conducted with the utmost discretion, for the sake of galactic stability, of course. Meanwhile, in the galactic archives, Kyle stared intently at a historical record displayed on his monitor. Tiny, almost imperceptible alterations rippled across the text. He zoomed in, his brow furrowed. That's not right. This passage originally referenced early Iridian trade routes. Now it's blank. He muttered to himself. They're scrubbing the records. Subtle, but definitely there. Back on Iridia, Estelle faced her superior, Director Thuron, in his austere office. Dr. Vess, Thuron said, his voice sharp, the Council has expressed concerns about your methodology. Are you certain your personal biases are not influencing your interpretation of the data? Estelle met his gaze, her mandibles tightening. Director, my only bias is towards the truth. The data speaks for itself. Kyle contacted Estelle through a secure channel. Estelle, I've found something. The Council is altering historical records, specifically those related to your glyphs and early Iridian history. They're trying to bury your findings. A week later, Estelle stood before the Galactic Council, presenting her evidence. Holographic projections displayed the glyphs, the carbon dating results, and comparative analyses. And as you can see, she concluded, the evidence strongly suggests that Iridian civilization is far older than previously believed. These glyphs represent a missing chapter in galactic history, a chapter that demands further investigation. A Glarac counselor responded, his voice dripping with condescension. Dr. Vess, while your enthusiasm is commendable, your evidence is at best anomalous. These so-called glyphs are likely the result of natural geological processes. As for the dating discrepancies, they are undoubtedly misinterpretations of the data. Another counselor, the Xyler, added, indeed. We cannot allow unsubstantiated claims to disrupt the established galactic narrative. Such disruptions could have unforeseen consequences. The Glarac leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. Dr. Vess, I would strongly advise you to reconsider your line of inquiry. Your career, your reputation. They are valuable assets. It would be a shame to see them tarnished. Back in the archives, Kyle discovered a hidden sublevel within the database, accessible only through a complex series of encrypted protocols. Inside, he found records of similar discoveries, dating back centuries, all systematically suppressed by the Council. Species after species, their histories rewritten, their achievements erased. A holographic map displayed the locations of these suppressed discoveries, a web of hidden truths spanning the galaxy. Estelle returned to her lab to find it ransacked. Data chips were missing, equipment was smashed, and her research notes were scattered across the floor. Her life's work, seemingly destroyed. Kyle, monitoring the situation remotely, sent a frantic message to Estelle. Estelle, they're raiding your lab. Get out of there. I'm downloading your data now, but I don't know how much time I have. He worked furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols and downloading the encrypted files. The progress bar crawled agonizingly slowly. Estelle and Kyle met in a deserted spaceport cantina, the dim lighting casting long shadows across their faces. They took everything, Estelle said, her voice flat. My research, my notes, everything. Kyle slid a data chip across the table. I managed to salvage a backup. It's not everything, but it's better than nothing. He paused, his gaze meeting hers. Estelle, the council isn't just trying to discredit you. They're trying to erase you. They've been doing this for centuries, suppressing any discovery that threatens their power. Kyle hesitated, then said, I've been doing my own research into ancient human history. What I've found suggests that humanity's past has been deliberately erased. We were more than what they tell us. Estelle looked at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. So what do we do? Kyle met her gaze, his voice firm. We go into hiding. We continue our investigation independently beyond the council's reach. We find the truth no matter what it takes. As they prepared to leave the cantina, a squad of council agents stormed through the entrance, energy weapons drawn. Estelle Vess and Kyle Davis, you are under arrest. Kyle grabbed Estelle's hand, pulling her towards a hidden exit. Run! They sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors of the spaceport, dodging crates and evading pursuers. Kyle, drawing on his knowledge of the spaceport's layout, led them through a series of back alleys and hidden passages. They reached a small, unmarked transport ship, its engines humming quietly. Kyle hot-wired the controls, and the ship lurched into motion, blasting off into the darkness of space just as the council agents reached the landing pad. As they sped away from the spaceport, Kyle accessed the salvaged data. A fragmented message appeared on the screen, seemingly from an ancient human civilization. The message read, Seek the sanctuary, coordinates, encoded, await the awakening. Estelle looked at Kyle, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and dedication. Where to now? Kyle pointed to a remote, uncharted planet displayed on the navigation console. There, a known location for ancient ruins and maybe a few answers. And the message, Kyle breathed, his fingers flying across the ancient console, sweat beading on his forehead. He muttered a string of phonemes that sounded like a forgotten language. Almost got it. Estelle, pulse rifle raised, rotated slowly, her multifaceted eyes scanning the dense jungle surrounding their makeshift camp. Bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow on the razor-edged leaves of the alien flora. The air vibrated with the chirps and clicks of unseen predators. Council patrols will be here soon. We need to move, Kyle. He swore softly in English, a language Estelle was slowly learning to decipher the nuances of. Got it. A sequence of coordinates, planetary designation. This planet, then. A specific location, sounds like. A hidden entrance. He looked up, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of excitement and fear. An ancient human research facility, Estelle. According to this, it's still here. Then let's not linger, she said, her voice tight. I don't like the feeling of being hunted. Their journey across the uncharted planet was a brutal testament to its hostility. Towering, carnivorous plants snapped at them with thorny vines. Packs of six-legged, reptilian creatures with phosphorescent eyes stalked them from the shadows. Kyle, surprisingly adept, used his knowledge of Earth's wilderness survival techniques, adapting them to this alien environment. He identified edible though foul-tasting plants and fashioned makeshift weapons from sharpened stones and sturdy branches. Estelle's scientific knowledge proved equally vital, allowing her to identify poisonous flora and predict the behavior of the local fauna. After days of relentless travel, Estelle stopped, raising a hand. There, I'm detecting an anomaly. A disruption in the electromagnetic field. She adjusted her scanner, its screen displaying a complex web of energy signatures. Advanced cloaking technology, human design, I believe, concealing something beneath that rock face. Kyle ran his hand over the seemingly solid rock. Impressive, even I can't see anything. Estelle produced a small device from her belt, a phase disruptor. With a flick of a switch, it emitted a high-frequency pulse. The rock face shimmered, then vanished, revealing a narrow metal doorway. Inside, the air hung thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Flickering emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows across the walls. Corridors stretched into the darkness, lined with consoles covered in dust and cobwebs. Incredible, Kyle breathed, his voice echoing in the vast space. A time capsule. They moved deeper into the facility, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Kyle discovered a holographic projector, miraculously still functional. With trembling hands, he activated it. A grainy image flickered to life, showing humans in sleek spacesuits, launching from Earth towards the stars. Other images followed. Massive orbital stations, bustling lunar colonies, and ships warping to distant galaxies. A montage of humanity's lost potential. Estelle, meanwhile, was studying the facility's energy signatures. "There's a powerful energy source emanating from the central chamber," she announced, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "I've never seen anything like it." The central chamber was vast and circular, dominated by a colossal deactivated weapon. It resembled a lance, forged from an unknown alloy that shimmered with an inner light. Intricate symbols were etched along its surface, pulsing with dormant energy. "What is that?" Kyle whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. As if in answer, another holographic projector flickered to life. A human in a military uniform appeared, his face grim. "If you are seeing this, then the Xylo's threat has returned. This is the Stellar Lance, our last line of defense. It is capable of destroying entire star systems. Use it only as a last resort." Estelle approached the lance cautiously, her scanner whirring. "The energy source. It's incredibly unstable. If it's not contained, it could cause a chain reaction, a catastrophic explosion." Kyle turned to her, his face hardening. "We could use it, Estelle, against the Council, level the playing field." Estelle recoiled. "You would destroy a star system, become the very threat they feared." Before Kyle could reply, the facility shuddered. Red lights flashed and a klaxon blared. "They're here," Estelle said grimly. "Council agents." A squad of heavily armed Council agents stormed into the chamber, led by a reptilian commander with cold, reptilian eyes. "Kyle Davis, Estelle, you are under arrest. Surrender immediately." "Like hell," Kyle snarled, drawing his makeshift weapon. A firefight erupted. Kyle, surprisingly agile, dodged energy blasts and returned fire with his crude weapon, taking down several agents. Estelle, using her pulse rifle with deadly accuracy, provided cover, strategically targeting the agents' armor-weak points. They fought back to back, a whirlwind of desperate courage against overwhelming odds. During the chaos, an energy blast struck the stellar lance. The weapon shuddered, and a surge of energy ripped through the chamber, disabling the facility's defenses. The cloaking field flickered and died, revealing the facility's location to the orbiting Council ships. Estelle, reacting instantly, rerouted power conduits, stabilizing the lance before it could fully charge. The explosion was averted, but the facility was now exposed. The Council agents, reinforced, overwhelmed them. Kyle and Estelle were disarmed and restrained. The reptilian commander approached, his eyes filled with disdain. "Take them away, and secure the weapon." As they were dragged away, Kyle and Estelle exchanged a quick, knowing glance. A silent promise, a flicker of defiance in the face of impossible odds. They had a plan. The detention facility blurred as the transport shuddered to life. Kyle felt the familiar sting of the neural dampeners, but this time, something was different. He focused, letting the pain sharpen his mind. He remembered a xenoanatomy lecture he'd audited years ago, detailing the surprisingly fragile nerve cluster that controlled the Blorgonian wrist restraint mechanism. A legacy of his human curiosity. "Estelle," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "The restraints. I think I can." Estelle, across from him, barely visible in the dim light, nodded almost imperceptibly. A faint hum emanated from her wrist device, growing in intensity. The transport's internal lights flickered. "Comms are down," she mouthed, her face grim. "Give me a moment." Kyle flexed his hands against the restraints, feeling for the subtle indentation. He focused, picturing the Blorgonian anatomy, remembering the precise angle of pressure needed. With a sharp, focused movement, he twisted his wrist. A faint click echoed in the confined space, followed by the satisfying release of the energy field. "Now," he yelled. Estelle unleashed a surge of iridian energy, channeled through her modified wrist device. The transport lurched violently as the engine sputtered and died. Alarms blared. The guards, hulking figures in metallic armor, turned toward them, weapons raised. Kyle lunged, grabbing the nearest guard's energy rifle. He slammed the butt of the weapon into the guard's helmet, the alien slumping to the floor. Estelle, freed from her restraints, disarmed the other guard with a swift series of movements, her iridian agility a stark contrast to the guard's brute force. They reached the cockpit, the pilot struggling to regain control. Kyle ripped him from his seat and slammed him against the console. Estelle took the controls, her fingers flying across the alien interface. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice strained. "They'll be on us in minutes." On the bridge of the Galactic Council cruiser Indomitable, Commander Thrax received the distress call. His face, a rigid mask of chitinous armor, tightened. "Report," he barked at his second in command. Transport Vessel Designation TX-47 reporting. "Multiple system failures, loss of control. Possible prisoner escape," the officer stammered. Thrax's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Davis and the Iridian, Containment Protocol Omega. I want them back in custody immediately." "Commander," the officer hesitated. "There's also a priority directive from the Council." Regarding the Stellar Lance. Thrax turned, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Speak plainly. The Council has ordered a full lockdown of the research facility, no one in or out, and they've authorized preliminary activation tests on the Lance." A flicker of unease crossed Thrax's face. Activation, but the potential consequences, the existential threat. "The Council believes they can control it, Commander. They see it as a deterrent, a demonstration of our power." Thrax turned away, his gaze fixed on the star charts. "Fools, they don't understand what they're playing with." Flashback sequence. A holographic recording flickered to life within the Seed Vault's database. A human scientist, her face etched with weariness, addressed the camera. "If you're seeing this, it means we failed to contain it completely. The anomaly. We call it the existential threat for lack of a better term. It feeds on energy, on technological advancement. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the more vulnerable it is. We discovered it centuries ago, almost by accident. And what we found scared us so much, we decided to take a step back." The scientist paused, her voice cracking with emotion. "We sacrificed our own progress, our own ambitions to focus on defense, to create something that could protect the galaxy, even if it meant our own decline. The Stellar Lance isn't a weapon, it's a shield, a last resort, but it must never be used lightly. Its activation could draw the very thing it's meant to defend against." The recording flickered and died, leaving only the cold, sterile light of the vault. Estelle stared blankly at the controls, the scientist's words echoing in her mind. "They sacrificed everything," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "They limited themselves to protect us." Kyle watched her, his expression somber. "Humanity's always been good at playing the long game, Estelle, even if it means losing in the short term. But why hide it? Why let us believe?" "Maybe they knew we wouldn't understand," Kyle said, his gaze drifting towards the viewport. "Maybe they knew we'd be too tempted by power." The pursuing Council ships gained on them, their energy cannons flashing. Estelle expertly maneuvered the transport through the treacherous asteroid field, dodging massive chunks of rock and debris. "They're not giving up," Kyle said, bracing himself against the turbulence. "They really want us silenced. They don't want the truth to come out," Estelle replied, her voice tight with tenacity. "They want to weaponize the Lance." "Weaponize it?" Kyle exclaimed. "That's insane. The recording said it could trigger the—" "Exactly," Estelle interrupted. They're willing to risk everything for galactic dominance. Kyle cursed under his breath. We have to stop them. We have to sabotage the lance. How? Estelle asked, her brow furrowed. It's the most heavily guarded facility in the galaxy. Kyle paused, thinking quickly. There's a hidden communications relay station on the edge of the asteroid field, an old human outpost. We can use it to send a message to allies outside the Council, warn them about what's happening. They reached the relay station, a derelict structure clinging to a large asteroid. The station was dark and silent, but Kyle, drawing on forgotten knowledge, managed to restore power to the ancient systems. Almost there, he muttered, his fingers flying across the console. Just need to bypass the Council's encryption. Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashed. We've been detected, Estelle shouted, grabbing her energy pistol. A squad of Galactic Council agents, led by Commander Thrax himself, stormed into the relay station, weapons blazing. Davis, Estelle, surrender immediately, Thrax bellowed, his voice amplified by his helmet. Kyle dove for cover behind a console, returning fire with a salvaged blaster. Estelle moved with blinding speed, deflecting energy bolts with her wrist device. Suddenly, a searing blast of energy struck Estelle, throwing her against the wall. She crumpled to the ground, clutching her chest. Estelle, Kyle yelled, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw Thrax advancing, his weapon trained on Estelle. Kyle knew he had to act fast. He scrambled back to the console, his fingers frantically typing the final command. Message sent. He shouted just as Thrax fired again. Kyle threw himself to the side, narrowly avoiding the energy blast. He grabbed Estelle, pulling her towards the escape hatch. We have to go, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I'll come back for you, I promise. He dragged her through the hatch, sealing it behind them just as the Council agents reached the console. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Kyle staggered through the gnarled alien forest, Estelle's weight a crushing burden in his arms. Her Iridian physiology, usually so resilient, felt fragile, broken. Each rasping breath she took was a knife twisting in his gut. The air hung thick and humid, smelling of decaying vegetation and something acrid, metallic, the lingering scent of plasma fire. He had to get her somewhere safe and fast. He spotted it then, a crumbling structure half hidden by overgrown vines, its durasteel plating scarred and pitted. An abandoned medical outpost, according to the archaic maps flickering on his wrist-mounted display. Hope, a fragile seedling, sprouted in his chest. Inside, the outpost was a tomb of forgotten technology. Dust lay thick on cracked consoles, and flickering emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows. Kyle gently lowered Estelle onto a dilapidated bio bed. Her usually vibrant skin was ashen, her breathing shallow and uneven. Hold on, Estelle, he muttered, his voice hoarse. Just hold on. He rummaged through the scattered medical supplies, most of which were long past their expiration date. He found a barely functional auto-injector filled with broad-spectrum antibiotics and administered it. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. He cleaned and bandaged her wounds as best he could, his basic first aid knowledge stretched to its limit. Her condition remained critical. Her internal bleeding was beyond his ability to treat. Flashback. A young Estelle, no more than 10 Iridian cycles old, stood before a towering statue of the first archaeologist on Iridia. Her large, iridescent eyes were wide with wonder. The past speaks to us, Estelle, her mentor, a stern but loving Iridian elder named Thuron, said, his voice resonating with authority. It whispers secrets of civilizations long gone, of triumphs and tragedies, of knowledge lost and waiting to be rediscovered. It is our sacred duty to listen. Estelle gazed up at the statue, her heart filled with a burning desire to uncover those secrets, to become a voice for the voiceless past. Thuron placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. But remember, Estelle, he cautioned, the past is a powerful force. It can illuminate, but it can also corrupt. Always seek the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. On the bridge of the Crucible, a hulking Galactic Council destroyer, Commander Varkos stared at the holographic display. A single, faint distress signal pulsed on the screen. "Identify the origin point," he barked, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Communications Relay Station Gamma 7, Commander," a junior officer replied, his fingers flying across the console. The message was heavily encrypted, but we managed to isolate a partial decryption key. It appears to be a medical distress call. Varkos's reptilian eyes narrowed. "Human." "I'll wager that it is the human and the traitorous Iridian. They are more resourceful than I anticipated. Prepare a squadron for immediate deployment," he ordered. "I want that relay station secured, and the surrounding area. No escape routes. None." Inside the Galactic Council chambers on Corvus Prime, a heated debate was underway. Councillor Valerius, his avian features etched with concern, addressed the assembly. "Commander Varkos's actions are excessive," he stated, his voice barely above a whisper. "The aggressive pursuit of these two individuals is drawing unwanted attention. We risk exposing our interests." Councillor Morana, her crystalline form shimmering with indignation, shot back. "Are you suggesting we allow a human and a rogue scientist to jeopardize galactic stability? Humanity's ancient technology poses a grave threat. We must contain them by any means necessary." Commander Varkos's voice boomed through the chamber via comm link, cutting off any further debate. "The Stellar Lance has been moved to a secure location for final testing. The scientists are reporting odd data readings, but I assure you, we are on the verge of a breakthrough." Kyle cursed under his breath. The medical outpost's automated systems were a mess. Damaged power conduits sparked erratically, and diagnostic screens flickered with indecipherable code. He needed to get the life support systems online, stabilize Estelle's internal bleeding, and monitor her vital signs. But without power, without functional diagnostic tools, he was flying blind. He began scavenging for replacement parts, his fingers nimble as he stripped wires from broken consoles and cannibalized defunct medical equipment. He bypassed damaged circuits, rerouted power flows, and MacGyvered solutions with scrap metal and salvage technology. Hours blurred into a frantic race against time. While working, he stumbled upon a hidden data log buried deep within the system's memory banks. The outpost wasn't just a medical facility. It was a secret research station studying a mysterious energy anomaly detected in the region. The log spoke of dangerous experiments, unstable dimensional rifts, and a project codenamed Stellar Lance. A sharp gasp escaped Estelle's lips. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. "Kyle," she whispered, her voice weak. "The Stellar Lance, it's not just a weapon." He leaned closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "What is it, Estelle? What is it really?" "A key," she rasped. "A key to unlocking a dangerous dimension, one humanity feared." She paused, struggling for breath. "Humanity's purpose isn't to be the galaxy's silent helpers. It's protectors. It's time for us to return." Before Kyle could respond, a chime from the console alerted him to an incoming transmission. He hesitated, then activated the comm link. "DRIS is Dr. Aris Thorne," a voice crackled through the speaker. "I am a scientist within the Galactic Council. I intercepted your message. I can offer assistance, but I require information about humanity's past." Kyle's mind raced. Could he trust this scientist? Was this a trap? But Estelle's life hung in the balance, and the Stellar Lance posed a threat to the entire galaxy. He had no choice. "What do you know about the Stellar Lance?" he asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "The Council's tests are causing rifts in spacetime," Thorne replied urgently. "They're on the verge of unleashing something. Something humanity feared, an existential threat." "What do you need from me?" Kyle asked. "The Council doesn't know what humanity did to prevent this," Thorne said. "Tell me, and I will tell you how to stop the Stellar Lance." "I need coordinates to a hidden research facility," Kyle said. one that contains information about the stellar lance's weaknesses. Thorne rattled off a series of coordinates, then added, "The information is there, but the facility is heavily guarded. Be careful." Before Kyle could thank him, the comm link was severed. The roar of engines filled the air. Council ships. They had found them. "They're here," he said, his voice grim. He looked at Estelle, her face pale and drawn. He had a choice to make: stay and defend her, or flee to find the information needed to stop the stellar lance. He made his decision. "I'm sorry, Estelle," he whispered, gently stroking her hair, "but I have to trust him." He activated the outpost's self-destruct sequence, setting it to detonate in 5 minutes. The explosion would mask their escape. He carefully lifted Estelle into his arms and stumbled towards a hidden escape pod, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and dedication. The escape pod bucked violently, alarms screaming a discordant symphony of impending doom. Red lights strobed across Estelle's pale face, highlighting the blood seeping through the makeshift bandage on her arm. Kyle wrestled with the damaged controls, his fist clenched as he gripped the yoke. The proximity alarm blared, indicating the pursuing council ships were still hot on their tail. "Damn it," Kyle muttered, thumping his hand against the navigation console. "The automated system is fried. I'm going to have to plot this manually." He glanced at the flickering display, a star chart swimming with unfamiliar constellations. The coordinates Thorne had provided were a lifeline, but reaching them wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, a series of rapid beeps cut through the din. A coded message flashed on the comm screen. Kyle quickly decrypted it. "It's Thorne," he said, his voice tight with urgency. The message tenacitied into a distorted image of a gaunt face, framed by the flickering light of what looked like a server room. "Kyle Davis," the image crackled, "and Dr. Estelle. I am Dr. Aris Thorne. The council knows you escaped. They've deployed advanced quantum tracking. You need to break the lock." "How?" Kyle asked, his fingers flying across the control panel. "They're using the comm relays to triangulate your position. Manipulate the signal bleed. Route your outgoing signal through the Xylos relay, then bounce it off the dark side of Cygnus VII. It's a blind spot in their network. Do it quickly." Thorne's image flickered and died. Estelle groaned, her hand clutching her side. "The stellar lance." She gasped. "It requires a specific energy signature for activation, a resonance frequency, dimensional harmonics." Kyle spared her a worried glance. "Can you be more specific?" "The frequency. It's tied to the dimensional rifts themselves, the council. They've been experimenting with it, trying to stabilize the rift." A jolt ran through the pod as Kyle rerouted the comm signal. "Done," he said, his brow furrowed. "Now what?" Flashback. The sterile white lab hummed with barely controlled energy. Aris Thorne, his face younger, less etched with weariness, stood before a massive device, the stellar lance. A swirling vortex of iridescent energy pulsed at its core. Council members, their faces grim, observed from a shielded platform. "The dimensional tier is stable," a reptilian council member hissed. "Proceed with the calibration." Thorne hesitated, his hand hovering over the activation switch. "Are we certain this is the only way? The potential for destabilization. The consequences." "Silence, Thorne," the council member snapped. "Your concerns are irrelevant. We are on the verge of unlocking the secrets of the universe, the power to reshape reality itself. Do not falter." Thorne closed his eyes, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. He activated the device. In flashback, the escape pod lurched violently as it entered an asteroid field. Jagged rocks, some the size of small moons, hurtled past. Kyle, his face grim, expertly piloted the pod through the treacherous maze, relying on his instincts and reflexes to avoid collisions. Alarms blared warnings of near misses. "Kyle, look!" Estelle cried, pointing to a section of space ahead. "Distortions. In the fabric of space. Energy readings. They match the readings from the medical outpost." Dimensional rifts, Kyle realized, his eyes widening. The energy anomaly they were studying. It's connected to the stellar lance. Suddenly, the proximity alarm screamed again, even louder this time. "They've found us," Kyle yelled. "They're cutting off our path to the research facility." Thorne's voice crackled over the comm. "Davis, they're anticipating your every move." "I'll guide you. There's a nebula ahead, the Serpent's Kiss. Unpredictable spatial anomalies. It's the only way to lose them." Kyle hesitated. "A nebula, that's suicide. It's your only chance, trust me." Kyle gripped the yoke his heart made. "Brace yourself, Estelle." He plunged the escape pod into the swirling chaos of the Serpent's Kiss. After what felt like an eternity, the pod emerged from the nebula, battered but intact. Ahead, orbiting a remote gas giant, was a camouflaged space station. "There it is," Kyle said, relief flooding his voice. "The research facility." As they docked with the station, the lights flickered and a lockdown sequence initiated. A holographic projection flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced council commander. "Kyle Davis, Estelle," the commander's voice boomed. "Your escape was unforeseen. Doctor, your journey ends here. Dr. Aris Thorne has been working with us all along. He led you here." Kyle stared at the projection, his heart sinking. "Thorne. He was instrumental in luring you into this trap. Surrender peacefully and we guarantee your immunity. Resist and you will be eliminated. The stellar lance has been moved to this facility. Final testing is underway. Soon we will open a tear in the fabric of space and time. Your interference is no longer required." "Aris, Thorne." Kyle's voice was barely a whisper, tinged with disbelief. He stared at Estelle, seeking confirmation, denial, anything. Estelle's typically composed features were etched with shock. Her hand trembled as she reached for the comm panel, fingers fumbling over the controls. "There has to be some mistake," she muttered, attempting to re-establish contact with Thorne. Static hissed from the console, then a curt, automated message. "Communication channel severed." A klaxon blared, shattering the fragile silence. Red emergency lights pulsed, bathing the research station in an ominous glow. Automated defense turrets whirred to life, their barrels swiveling ominously. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off sections of the station with resounding metallic thuds. "He set us up," Kyle said, the realization hardening his features. "From the beginning." "We need to disable the central control," Estelle said, her voice regaining its focus. "Regain control of the station before we're locked down completely." They moved quickly, adrenaline surging through their veins. The corridors, once familiar, now felt like a deadly maze. As they rounded a corner, two security drones, sleek metallic spheres armed with stun cannons, floated into view. "Shields up," Estelle ordered, raising her arm. The energy field flickered into existence, providing a momentary barrier. "Direct engagement is a waste," Kyle said, his eyes scanning the environment. "They're too maneuverable. We need to use the environment." He pointed to a series of exposed conduits running along the ceiling. "If we can overload those." Working in tandem, Kyle fired a series of precisely aimed shots at the conduits, while Estelle maintained a defensive perimeter. The conduits sparked and sputtered, showering the drones with bursts of electricity. One drone went offline immediately, crashing to the floor. The other, momentarily disabled, drifted erratically. "Now," Kyle yelled, grabbing a discarded maintenance panel and hurling it at the remaining drone. The panel struck true, sending the drone spiraling into a wall. They pressed on, only to be confronted by another obstacle. "Energy dampeners," Estelle said, her voice grim. "They're interfering with our shielding. We'll be vulnerable." "Damn it," Kyle swore under his breath. "Looks like our mentor didn't want us being too comfortable." Kyle noticed a barely visible seam in the wall. "There," he said, pointing. "Hidden maintenance tunnel. Less direct route, but it might give us a chance to evade the main security forces." The tunnel was cramped and dark, the air thick with the smell of ozone and decay. They moved slowly, their senses on high alert. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, but their path was blocked by a complex array of lasers and pressure plates. "Aris left us a little present," Kyle muttered, examining the setup. Looks like a deadly puzzle. Estelle ran her hand along a section of the wall, her brow furrowed in concentration. The pattern. It's linked to Iridian memory encoding, extremely old encoding. She paused, her eyes widening. This predates even the earliest records of Thorn's supposed age. This is impossible. She worked quickly, her fingers dancing over the pressure plates, her mind unraveling the complex sequence. With a final click, the lasers deactivated and the path cleared. How did you do that? Kyle asked, impressed. Iridian memory encoding is based on complex harmonic resonance, Estelle explained. This particular sequence is archaic. Only someone with extensive knowledge of ancient Iridian history could decipher it. They reached the central control room. The door hissed open, revealing a squad of council soldiers, their weapons trained on the entrance. Breach and clear. Kyle shouted, instinctively reverting to combat protocols from a life he tried to forget. He hurled a flash grenade into the room, blinding the soldiers. Taking advantage of the chaos, Kyle and Estelle dove into the room, taking cover behind overturned consoles. Plasma fire sizzled around them. Estelle, get to the panel. Kyle yelled, returning fire, his movements precise and deadly. He moved with a fluidity and efficiency that belied his historian's demeanor, drawing the soldiers' attention while Estelle made her way towards the central control panel. Estelle worked feverishly, bypassing security protocols. System override initiated, she announced. Automated defenses disabled. But it's triggered a lockdown of the Stellar Lance testing chamber. A holographic image flickered to life on the control panel. It was Aris Thorn, his face devoid of any warmth or kindness. Impressive, Thorn's holographic image said, his voice echoing through the room. You made it further than I anticipated, but it ends here. My allegiance is not to the Council, but to a faction that understands the true potential of the Stellar Lance. A faction that will use it to bring order to this chaotic galaxy. Humanity's knowledge, Thorn continued, his eyes glinting with fanaticism, is the key to controlling the Lance. Once we've extracted everything we need from you, you will both be expendable. He's going to use the Stellar Lance for galactic domination, Kyle said, his voice grim. Estelle accessed the station's schematics. The Lance is nearing full activation. If it reaches critical mass, it will create a dimensional rift that could destabilize this entire region of space. There has to be a way to stop it, Kyle said, his gaze fixed on the schematics. There is a fail-safe protocol, Estelle said, her fingers flying across the console. But it requires a manual override. Inside the testing chamber, Kyle met Estelle's gaze, his expression grim. That's walking into a heavily fortified area, Council soldiers, automated defenses, and Aris. We don't have a choice, Estelle said, her voice resolute. If we don't stop the Stellar Lance, everything is lost. As they turned to head towards the testing chamber, Estelle paused, her brow furrowed. Wait, she said, her eyes fixed on a sensor reading. The testing chamber. It's emitting the same type of particles that exist around Earth. The particle analysis is complete, Estelle said, her voice tight. The isotopic signatures. They're nearly identical to those found in Earth's atmosphere. It's a match, Kyle, this device. It's linked to Earth. Kyle ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. So, the Stellar Lance isn't just using some random energy source. It's keying into something specific about Earth. Something unique. Maybe that's why Aris was so interested in me and us. Maybe that's why humans are the target. But what advantage could Earth's atmosphere provide? Estelle questioned, her fingers flying across the console, pulling up more data streams. I don't know precisely, Kyle admitted, but what if the Lance is tapping into some inherent property of Earth, something that gives Aris an edge, the readings we saw earlier, the resonance. It could be amplifying something. We need to use this against him. They huddled together, foreheads nearly touching, a plan forming in the crucible of their shared desperation. We disrupt the energy flow, Estelle stated, her eyes gleaming with sudden inspiration. If the lance is calibrated for Earth's atmospheric composition, we manipulate the chamber's atmosphere. Exactly, Kyle exclaimed. We throw off its readings, make it unstable. He paused, considering. We could modify our environmental suits to mimic Earth's atmosphere, increase the nitrogen, lower the... I don't know, whatever trace elements are unique. It might mask our presence from Ares sensors, or at least scramble the lance's targeting matrix. While Kyle began rerouting the suit's environmental controls, Estelle accessed the station's schematics, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Kyle, you need to see this. Her voice was grave. He joined her, peering at the complex network of conduits and power lines. What is it? Hidden conduits, she pointed out a series of lines, almost invisible against the background. They're linking the testing chamber directly to the main reactor core. It's a bypass, an emergency power feed. Estelle's eyes widened in horror. If the lance overloads, if it draws too much power, it could create a feedback loop, a chain reaction. It could destabilize the entire reactor, destroying the station, potentially even, creating a ripple effect across the planet. The weight of the situation crashed down on them. So, it's not just about disabling the weapon anymore, Kyle said, his voice grim. We have to sever that connection to the reactor core, prevent a catastrophic explosion. They worked in focused silence, modifying their suits and formulating a new plan. The air thrummed with urgency. Finally, they stood before the testing chamber entrance, the heavy blast doors gleaming under the harsh lights. Increased security measures were evident. Council soldiers, clad in heavy armor, patrolled the perimeter, their weapons raised. Ready? Estelle asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kyle nodded, activating the modified environmental suit. A faint shimmer enveloped him, the air around him distorting slightly. Let's hope this works. As they moved forward, the modified suits began to subtly manipulate the energy field within the chamber. The localized distortion was almost imperceptible, but it was enough. The security sensors flickered erratically, momentarily blinded. They slipped past the guards, unnoticed like ghosts in the machine. Inside the testing chamber, the stellar lance dominated the space. Aris Thorn stood before it, his face illuminated by the weapon's ethereal glow. He was surrounded by heavily armed council soldiers, their faces grim and determined. Aris turned, a faint smile playing on his lips. I sensed your presence, he said, his voice smooth and devoid of warmth. I must admit I'm disappointed. I anticipated your arrival, of course. I've simply prepared accordingly. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. A shimmering force field sprang into existence, sealing Kyle and Estelle inside the testing chamber. They were trapped. Aris, what is the meaning of this? Estelle demanded, her voice permeated with anger. Patience, Estelle, Aris said, his eyes gleaming with manic energy. You are about to witness the dawn of a new era, an era where humanity finally fulfills its potential. He turned to Kyle. You see, Kyle, humanity's unique connection to Earth. It makes you the perfect conduits. The perfect keys to unlocking the Stellar Lance's true power. With you, I can reshape galactic power. Aris raised his hand and the Stellar Lance hummed to life, its energy building to a crescendo. A swirling vortex of light appeared before them, a dimensional rift shimmering in the air. Behold, Aris proclaimed, his voice filled with triumph. The ability to transport entire fleets across vast distances instantaneously. The galaxy will tremble before our might. But as the rift expanded, it began to destabilize. Bursts of raw energy crackled around its edges, threatening to overwhelm the chamber's containment field. Alarms blared, their shrill cries echoing through the station. Estelle's fingers flew across her wrist-mounted console. Kyle, the readings are off the charts. There's a feedback loop in the Lance's energy matrix. It's drawing power from Earth. At an unsustainable rate, Kyle felt a cold dread grip his heart. He's not just using Earth's atmosphere, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the alarms. He's draining Earth's energy. He's killing our planet. I have to sever the connection to the reactor core, Estelle said, her voice tight with grit. Buy me some time. Estelle sprinted towards the conduits, dodging energy arcs and leaping over sparking wires. Kyle, with a roar of defiance, charged towards Aris and the council soldiers, drawing his sidearm. Chaos erupted. Blaster fire filled the chamber, ricocheting off the walls. Kyle, using his agility and quick thinking, managed to evade the worst of the barrage, taking cover behind the massive machinery. Estelle, with her technical expertise, worked frantically to disable the reactor conduits, sparks flying from her fingertips. Just as Estelle severed the final connection, a blinding flash of light filled the chamber. Aris, screaming in frustration, overloaded the stellar lance. A dimensional wave erupted from the center of the chamber, washing over everything in its path. Kyle and Estelle were thrown against the chamber walls, their bodies slammed against the cold metal. The world spun, and darkness threatened to consume them. Then, as the dimensional wave subsided, something unexpected happened. The Earth-like signatures around them, the faint shimmer from their modified suits, suddenly activated, glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. The dimensional wave slammed into them, a wall of distorted light and fractured sound. Kyle felt his teeth rattle, every nerve ending screaming. Estelle stumbled, her optical sensors blurring as static danced across her vision. The Earth-like signatures around them flared, intensifying into a shimmering, almost tangible aura that pressed against the chaotic energy. Across the chamber, Aris Thorn roared as the stellar lance bucked in his grasp. Energy arced from the weapon, throwing him back against a console. He slammed into the metal with a sickening thud, his face contorted with fury. The dimensional rift, now untethered, pulsed erratically, emitting unpredictable blasts of violet energy that scorched the walls. Estelle, regaining her footing, focused her sensors on the swirling vortex. The Earth-like particles, she said, her voice tight, they're resonating with the dimensional wave, creating localized pockets of temporal distortion. Pockets within pockets. A jolt of raw, unfiltered information flooded Kyle's mind. He saw impossible geometries, shimmering energy fields, and the ghost of a long-lost city powered by something akin to geothermal energy. He didn't understand it, but he knew it, an instinctive, visceral understanding of ancient human technology and Earth's unique properties. The dimensional rift expanded with terrifying speed, consuming sections of the testing chamber. Consoles twisted into grotesque shapes, sparking and smoking. Gravity flickered, sending loose equipment spinning wildly. The air crackled with ozone and the metallic tang of burning circuits. Aris, spitting blood, barked orders at his remaining soldiers. Contain the rift, seal it off. Energy weapons fire lanced toward the vortex, only to be swallowed without effect. One soldier screamed as a ripple of distorted space consumed him, leaving only a faint echo of his cry. Estelle, Kyle managed, his voice strained. The Earth signatures, there, linked, dormant genetic markers. Estelle's multifaceted eyes widened. Impossible, but the resonance. It suggests a connection, abilities, to manipulate space-time. Without conscious thought, Kyle raised his hand. A shimmering field of energy, the color of sunlight on water, emanated from his palm. It wasn't a weapon, but a stabilizer. The chaotic energy in a small section of the rift flickered, then briefly calmed. Aris, witnessing this, snarled, "Human, you will not interfere." He wrestled the stellar lance back into position, the weapon now shuddering violently. He refocused its energy, the beam narrowing, intensifying, targeting Kyle. He was trying to suppress Kyle's emerging power. The feedback loop intensified. The stellar lance vibrated so violently that the entire research station groaned. Metal screamed. Rivets popped. The lance threatened to tear itself and everything around it apart. Estelle's sensors blared. Secondary energy conduit, leading from the testing chamber to the experimental propulsion engine. Her eyes widened in horror. Aris. He intends to use the engine to amplify the Lance's power. He's trying to create a wormhole to transport his fleet across the galaxy. Kyle, now more attuned to the Earth signatures, sensed the propulsion engine. It was unstable, fragile, a disaster waiting to happen. The engine. It's not meant for that kind of power. It'll trigger a chain reaction. We have to stop him, Estelle said, her voice grim. Overload the engine, destabilize the rift. How? Reroute the Earth signatures. Use them to disrupt the containment field. Working frantically, Estelle accessed the engine's control systems, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. She rerouted the energy flow, funneling the Earth signatures into the engine's core. The propulsion engine began to emit a high-pitched whine that resonated deep in their bones. The containment field flickered and spasmed. The engine's core, visible through a viewport, glowed with an unnatural intensity, threatening to breach its casing. Aris, realizing the danger, roared in frustration. He lunged for the control panel, trying to shut down the engine, but Estelle's modifications had locked him out. "You fools! You'll destroy us all." Kyle, focusing his will, extended his hand again. Estelle joined him, amplifying her own understanding of the Earth signatures. Together, they created a localized temporal distortion around the engine, slowing its meltdown. But the rift, sensing the concentration of energy, pulsed violently, drawn to the disturbance. The dimensional rift focused its full power on the propulsion engine, accelerating its destabilization. The engine glowed white-hot. Space around it shimmered and twisted, forming a swirling vortex of space-time. "It's going to explode," Kyle shouted over the rising whine. Estelle pointed to the swirling rift. "The only way out is through. Before it collapses, we have to jump." The world swam back into focus, a kaleidoscope of greens and blues resolving into the damp, cavernous reality around them. Bioluminescent fungi pulsed with an eerie light, casting long, dancing shadows on the slick, obsidian walls. The air hung heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something ancient and vaguely floral. "Report," Estelle managed, her voice raspy. She ran a diagnostic on her wrist-mounted scanner, the display flickering erratically. "My shields are down to 15%. The rift jump overloaded the regulators." Kyle grimaced, flexing his fingers. "Same here, and my abilities feel muted, like trying to shout underwater." He attempted to summon a spark of Earth's familiar energy, but only a faint shimmer appeared before fizzling out. His Earth signature abilities were weakened and erratic, making them less reliable. Estelle moved closer to a cluster of the glowing fungi, her scanner whirring. "These energy signatures. They're unlike anything I've ever encountered. Organic, but structured, almost. Engineered." Kyle shivered despite the humid air. A sudden image flashed in his mind, a colossal structure, vast and impossibly old, buried deep beneath the planet's surface. He blinked, the vision fading as quickly as it came. I saw something down there, a structure, huge, ancient." They began to explore the cavern, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting beings unlike any they had seen before. Slender, graceful figures with elongated limbs and large, multifaceted eyes. Scattered amongst the carvings were fragments of technology, shattered consoles, twisted metal, and crystalline shards humming with residual energy. This was not just a cave. It was the tomb of a forgotten civilization, a civilization that appeared to be pre-Iridian and possibly pre-galactic council. Deeper within the cavern, they discovered a chamber dominated by a massive holographic projector. With a surge of effort, Estelle managed to coax the device back to life. Flickering images filled the chamber, showing the rise and fall of this ancient civilization. They watched as the beings mastered dimensional manipulation, bending space and time to their will, creating stable wormholes that spanned vast distances. But their ambition had been their undoing. The recordings showed them experimenting with increasingly unstable energies, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Then came the catastrophic event, a blinding flash of light, followed by tremors that ripped the planet apart. The wormholes collapsed, unleashing a wave of dimensional energy that twisted and mutated everything in its path, destabilizing their entire planet. As Kyle watched, he noticed recurring symbols within the holographic displays, geometric patterns that resonated deep within his soul. He pulled out his worn copy of human mythology, flipping through the pages until he found a matching symbol, the Celtic knot representing the interconnectedness of all things, a potential link to Earth. Estelle, meanwhile, was focused on a different aspect of the recordings. That energy spike. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but it's there. She adjusted her scanner, her brow furrowed in concentration. It's similar to the energy signature of the stellar lance. Aris Thorn, he might have survived, he might have followed them. They continued their exploration, eventually stumbling upon a hidden chamber containing a deactivated portal device. The device was intricate and alien, its surface covered in glowing glyphs and pulsing conduits. This could be our way out, Estelle said, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. But it's heavily damaged. It would require significant repairs. As they began to assess the damage, a guttural growl echoed through the cavern. From the shadows emerged mutated creatures, grotesque parodies of the beings depicted in the holographic recordings. Their bodies were twisted and deformed, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Remnants of the civilization, transformed by the dimensional instability. The creatures lunged, their claws dripping with a viscous, phosphorescent fluid. Kyle instinctively reacted, reaching out with his weakened Earth signature ability. He focused his will, attempting to manipulate the flow of time around the creatures. A localized temporal field shimmered into existence, slowing their movements to a crawl. But the effort drained him, leaving him gasping for breath. "They're drawn to something," Estelle shouted, firing her plasma pistol. The bolts of energy seared through the creature's flesh, but they kept coming. The energy, it's like they're drawn to our Earth signatures. A chilling realization dawned on her. Humanity may have been involved in the civilization's downfall. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the cavern. "So, you survived." Aris Thorn stepped out of the shadows, leading a small squad of soldiers. His armor was damaged, scorched, and dented, but he still gripped the stellar lance in his hand. He had been tracking their energy signatures, and he intended to use them. "I know what you are," Aris said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "A dangerous anomaly. You must be contained." He gestured towards the portal device. "I'm going to use your energy and the lance to power this device and alert the Galactic Council." Kyle and Estelle exchanged a desperate glance, activating the portal with their unstable abilities and the stellar lance. It could trigger another dimensional catastrophe. "We can't let him do that," Kyle said, his voice grim. "But how do we stop him?" Estelle replied. An idea sparked in Kyle's mind. "The creatures. They're drawn to our Earth signatures. We can use that to our advantage." They decided to lure the creatures towards the portal, creating a diversion that would give them a chance to stop Aris. With a yell, Kyle unleashed a surge of Earth signature energy, drawing the attention of the mutated creatures. They turned, their eyes fixated on him, and began to shamble towards the portal device. Aris, oblivious to their plan, prepared to activate the portal. He inserted the stellar lance into the device, the chamber filling with a blinding light. Suddenly, the mutated creatures swarmed his position, their claws tearing at his armor. Chaos erupted as Aris and his squad fought to defend themselves. Kyle and Estelle were faced with a dilemma: escape through the unstable portal and risk a catastrophic event, or stay and fight Aris, potentially being captured by the Galactic Council. "We overload the portal device," Kyle said, his voice tight, "with a concentrated Earth signature. It'll destabilize the field, maybe collapse it entirely." Estelle nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the flickering light of the damaged equipment, while simultaneously luring the mutated specimens toward Aris, a risky convergence but our best chance. Estelle worked quickly, her slender, multi-jointed fingers manipulating the salvaged components. Sparks flew as she bypassed damaged circuits, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burning polymers. The device, a mangled fusion of Iridian tech and human ingenuity, began to hum with a strained intensity. "Earth signature beacon ready," she announced, her voice infused with a hint of apprehension. "Concentrated and unstable. It will attract them, Kyle. And anything else sensitive to these frequencies." Kyle watched the creatures milling in the distance, their grotesque forms shifting in the dim light. He closed his eyes, picturing their movements, their motivations. "They're drawn to the familiarity, the echo of something they once knew. We guide that echo." He adjusted the frequency modulator on his wrist console, subtly shifting the beacon's signal. The creatures stirred, their movements becoming more purposeful, their direction shifting imperceptibly toward Aris's location. Aris, back to back with the shimmering portal, slashed at the mutated creatures with his energy blade. They were relentless, their attacks growing bolder. He noticed the subtle shift in their focus, their movements becoming strangely predictable. His eyes narrowed. "Davis, Estelle," he shouted, his voice strained. "What are you doing? Are you herding these beasts toward me?" He raised the stellar lance, its crystalline structure glowing with contained energy. With a roar, he unleashed a wave of pure force, vaporizing a dozen creatures in an instant. The air crackled with residual power, but the lance's glow dimmed slightly. A grimace tightened his features. The portal device shrieked as the Earth signature beacon reached critical mass. Erratic pulses of energy erupted from its core, bathing the surrounding area in a disorienting light. The ground trembled and the air thrummed with an unnatural vibration. "It's becoming unstable," Kyle shouted over the din. "The portal could collapse. We need to get out of here." Aris, his face contorted with fury, deactivated the stellar lance. He stalked toward Kyle and Estelle, his hand resting on the hilt of his energy blade. "Sabotage. You deliberately destabilized the portal. You were never trying to help." Estelle stepped forward, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "We detected traces of Iridian DNA in those mutated specimens, Aris. This isn't just about this lost civilization. It involves us too." Kyle nodded, his gaze fixed on the swirling energy of the portal. This civilization was trying to weaponize Earth signatures. They failed. That's what created these creatures. That's what brought them down. Aris ignored them, his eyes fixed on the shimmering portal. "Lies. I will not be deterred by your manipulations." He activated his energy blade and charged toward the portal, determined to force his way through. The power of the stellar lance will overcome any instability. As Aris stepped through the portal's shimmering surface, a surge of energy coursed through the device. The stellar lance overloaded, its crystalline structure shattering. A blinding flash engulfed Aris, and he was sent spiraling into the dimensional rift, his screams echoing across the desolate landscape. Then, silence. The portal flickered, sputtered, and collapsed in on itself, leaving behind only a patch of scarred earth. Kyle and Estelle stood alone, stranded on the alien planet, cut off from the Galactic Council, their only hope of escape gone with Aris. Estelle approached the spot where Aris had stood. Half buried in the dirt was a data pad. "Aris's device," she said, picking it up. "Encrypted, of course." Hours later, Estelle's fingers flew across her console. "I've bypassed the primary encryption," she announced, her voice tight. "There's a hidden file. It suggests the Council knew about Earth's true history." More minutes stretched into an eternity as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Finally, the decryption completed. A single line of text appeared. "The key to Earth's return lies within the seed vault." Estelle's fingers danced across the cracked screen of Aris's data pad, each tap a calculated risk. Lines of alien script blurred into coherence, then back again as she bypassed encryption protocols with increasing desperation. Almost. Almost there, she muttered, her brow furrowed under the dim, flickering light of the crashed portal device. Finally, a cascade of translated text flooded the screen. "I've got something." The comms logs painted a grim picture. Estelle scrolled through message after message, each one a nail in the coffin of galactic trust. "He knew," she whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. Valerius knew the portal was unstable. He deliberately sent Aris. Kyle leaned closer, his eyes scanning the screen. Valerius, that name. He trailed off, lost in the labyrinth of his memory. He closed his eyes, picturing the ancient human texts he'd pored over for years. Faded ink, crumbling pages, tales dismissed as myth. Then a flicker of recognition. The betrayer. Human legend spoke of a counselor, Valerius, one who sought to rewrite history, to erase humanity's achievements from the galactic record. Estelle's breath hitched. There's more. Coordinates. Encrypted within a secondary file. They have to lead somewhere important. She worked quickly, bypassing another layer of security. "I've got it, but the location is heavily defended. Automated systems, energy barriers. It's a fortress." Their immediate need was communication. Kyle began scavenging parts from the wreckage of the portal device and the scattered remains of the derelict structures. "We need to get a message out. Let the council know what Valerius is doing." Hours turned into a desperate race against time. Kyle, fueled by adrenaline and years of pent-up frustration, worked with a frantic energy, soldering wires and rerouting power conduits. Estelle, despite her fatigue, guided him, her knowledge of alien technology proving invaluable. Finally, a crude but functional communication device flickered to life. They sent a priority signal to the Galactic Council, detailing their findings and requesting immediate assistance. Silence. They tried again and again. Nothing. "They're blocking us," Estelle said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Valerius has them under his control." As hope dwindled, a faint, almost imperceptible signal pulsed through the static. "Wait," Kyle said, adjusting the frequency. "I'm picking up a distress beacon. It's weak, but it's there." He pinpointed the location. "It's coming from the moon." Estelle shook her head. "The moon? That's insane, Kyle. It's a graveyard of failed experiments, gravitational anomalies, debris fields. It's suicide." Kyle's eyes sharp. "There's no one else who can help us. That signal. It could be someone who knows about the seed vault, about what Valerius is trying to hide. We have to try." He saw the doubt in her eyes, the fear, but also the flicker of understanding. They salvaged a repurposed escape pod from Aris's ship, a cramped and battered vessel that looked barely capable of atmospheric flight. The journey to the moon was a white-knuckle ride through asteroid fields and unpredictable gravitational currents. Alarms blared as the pod shuddered and bucked, but Kyle, his hands steady on the controls, navigated them through the chaos. The surface of the moon was a desolate wasteland, scarred by craters and littered with the skeletal remains of abandoned structures. They found the source of the distress signal, a ruined research facility, its walls breached, its corridors choked with dust and debris. Inside, they discovered a lone survivor, an alien scientist clinging to life support. His skin was translucent, his eyes wide with fear. The experiments," he croaked, his voice weak and raspy. "They were trying to manipulate time, to rewrite galactic history." He focused on Kyle and Estelle, his gaze intense. "Valerius, he knows you're here. He's sending hunters. He wants to silence you, to bury the truth forever." He reached out a trembling hand, offering a data chip. "Take this. It's a map of the underground tunnels. There's a hidden entrance to a secure data storage facility. Everything you need to know is there." As they approached the entrance, the ground erupted in a hail of laser fire. A team of mercenaries, clad in black armor and armed with advanced weaponry, emerged from the shadows. "Valerius sends his regards," their leader snarled, his voice distorted by a modulator. Kyle grabbed Estelle's hand. "Run!" They plunged into the labyrinthine tunnels, the mercenaries hot on their heels. Kyle, guided by the scientist's map, led them through a treacherous maze of booby traps and collapsed passages. He remembered the stories his grandfather told him of the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong and their tunnels. He had to think like them. Pressure plates triggered sonic blasts, narrow corridors concealed laser grids, and unstable platforms threatened to plunge them into bottomless chasms. A plasma bolt seared past Kyle's ear, narrowly missing his head. He returned fire with Aris's sidearm, forcing the mercenaries to take cover. But they were relentless, their pursuit unwavering. Suddenly, Estelle cried out, clutching her leg. A shard of shrapnel, dislodged by an explosion, had pierced her armor. I can't keep going," she gasped, her face pale with pain. Without hesitation, Kyle scooped her up into his arms. "Hold on," he said, his voice strained with effort. "I've got you." He pressed on, his muscles burning, his lungs screaming for air, but he refused to stop. He had to protect her, to protect the truth. They reached the data storage facility, a massive metal door sealed behind a shimmering energy shield. Kyle examined the shield, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "I recognize the energy signature," he said. "It's powered by tellurium-242, a rare element found only on Earth." Estelle, despite her pain, managed a weak smile. "Earth. It all leads back to Earth." Kyle's mind raced. He remembered the stellar lance, the weapon Aris had brought with him. It was damaged but still held a significant amount of energy. "We can overload the shield," he said. "Use the lance as a conduit, but it's risky. The explosion could be catastrophic." He looked at Estelle, her face etched with pain and willpower. He looked at the data storage facility, the gateway to the truth. He knew what he had to do. "Get back," he said, his voice firm. "This is going to be big." He hefted the stellar lance, aiming it at the energy shield. "Time to see if we can blow this thing to kingdom come." The stellar lance discharged its remaining energy, bathing the chamber in a blinding, blue-white light. A high-pitched whine ripped through the air, followed by a bone-jarring rumble. Dust and debris rained down as cracks spiderwebbed across the tunnel walls. "Kyle," Estelle coughed, shielding her eyes. "The tunnels, they're collapsing." He grabbed her arm, pulling her towards the flickering emergency lights. "We have to move, now." The tunnel groaned under immense pressure. Sections of the ceiling buckled, sending chunks of rock crashing to the floor. Estelle stumbled, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The energy shield was down, but the price was steep. "Data storage facility," Kyle urged, half dragging her forward. "If there's anything left, it's our only shot." Reaching the entrance, they found a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of data storage units. Most were dark, their interfaces shattered or melted. The air hung thick with the smell of burnt circuitry and decay. "Damn it," Kyle muttered, running his hand over a corroded console. "Most of this is fried." He moved to the next row, Estelle leaning heavily on him. A faint flicker emanated from a handful of units. Kyle forced one open, revealing a partially intact interface. "Human file systems." "Archaic, but I know them," he muttered, his fingers flying across the damaged controls. "Let's see what you've got." The screen flickered to life, displaying fragmented logs. Kyle began piecing them together, his eyes scanning the alien script. Communications, Valerius, and the Time Travelers. He paused, his expression hardening. He manipulated them. Erased key events from human history to consolidate his power. Estelle, despite her pain, focused on a different terminal. "Kyle, look at this, a hidden directory, schematics." She coughed again, blood flecking her lips. "A failsafe for the seed vault." The schematics were incomplete, a crucial component missing. A location tag pinpointed its whereabouts. "A research station," Kyle said grimly, "orbiting a gas giant, on the edge of explored space, heavily guarded no doubt." He continued to sift through the data, and Aris, his mission, confirmed. Valerius sent him here to activate the portal and eliminate any threats. Suddenly, the chamber hummed to life. Red lights flashed and laser grids snapped into existence, crisscrossing the room. Security drones armed with energy weapons detached from the ceiling. "Security system," Estelle yelled. "We triggered it," Kyle cursed under his breath. "I can bypass some of this," he said, frantically typing on a console, "but those drones are a problem." He managed to disable a section of the laser grid, creating a narrow path, but the drones were closing in, their weapons charged. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance. "Mercenaries," Estelle gasped. "They're here." Kyle grabbed her hand. "We have to move deeper into the complex." They sprinted through the maze of laser grids, the drones firing energy bolts that sizzled past their heads. The mercenaries were gaining ground, their weapons roaring. Estelle stumbled, her legs giving way. She collapsed against a wall, her face pale and drawn. I can't go on," she whispered, her voice weak. "Leave me, Kyle, save yourself. Get the schematics, save humanity." Kyle stared at her, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. The mission, humanity's future. It all rested on him, but he couldn't leave her, not like this. He knelt beside her, ignoring the approaching mercenaries. "I'm not leaving you, Estelle." He drew his sidearm, bracing himself against the wall. "We'll get out of this together." He returned fire, forcing the mercenaries to take cover. There has to be another way out. Scanning the chamber, his eyes landed on a barely visible crack in the wall. He moved closer, running his hand along the cold stone. A hidden passage. He widened the crack, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. An old mining tunnel. Abandoned, but it's our only chance. A wave of noxious gas wafted from the opening, stinging his eyes. "Toxic gases," Estelle coughed. "We can't breathe in there." "We have to," Kyle said grimly. "I'll figure something out." He ripped apart a damaged data unit, extracting filters and tubing. Using his knife, he fashioned a makeshift filtration system, connecting it to their helmets. "It's not perfect," he said, handing Estelle one of the filters, "but it'll buy us some time." They crawled into the tunnel, the air thick with the stench of chemicals and decay. The tunnel walls were unstable, threatening to collapse at any moment. As they moved deeper, a guttural growl echoed from the darkness. "What was that?" Estelle whispered, her hand tightening on the laser pistol she'd salvaged. A pair of glowing eyes appeared in the distance. Then another and another. "Mutated creatures," Kyle said grimly. "Experiments. Gone wrong." The creatures lunged, their bodies twisted and deformed. Kyle raised his weapon, firing short bursts. He remembered his training, the combat strategies he had learned so long ago. He moved with a speed and precision he had almost forgotten he possessed. He fought with a ferocity born of desperation, protecting Estelle while clearing a path through the tunnel. Ahead, he saw a faint light. They reached a larger cavern, revealing an abandoned mining vehicle, its surface covered in dust and grime. "A transport," Estelle exclaimed. "If we can get it running." Kyle examined the vehicle. "It needs a power cell. A rare one, and I bet it's not just lying around." He scanned the cavern, his eyes settling on a dark opening at the far end. "The creature's nest," he said grimly. "That's where we'll find it." "No, Kyle, it's too dangerous," Estelle protested. "I'll cover you." "You get the cell." He hesitated, then nodded. "Cover me, and be ready to move." He crept towards the nest, his heart pounding in his chest. The creatures were waiting, their eyes glowing in the darkness. He moved quickly, dodging their attacks, his knife flashing. He found the power cell, ripped it from its housing, and sprinted back towards the vehicle, the creatures hot on his heels. Estelle unleashed a barrage of laser fire, pinning down the creatures. Kyle reached the vehicle, slamming the power cell into place. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. They jumped inside, the vehicle lurching forward. Kyle steered through the narrow tunnel, dodging falling rocks and mutated creatures. They burst out of the tunnel entrance into the cold vacuum of space. The mining vehicle was damaged, leaking toxic gases. "We made it," Estelle gasped, leaning back against the seat. The vehicle's AI chimed to life. "Warning, hull breach detected. Life support systems compromised. Also, you are now wanted criminals in 7 systems. Formation The mining vehicle bucked violently. A high-pitched whine pierced the cockpit, followed by a guttural cough from the straining engines. Kyle wrestled with the controls, his fingers tightening against the worn grips. Estelle, brace yourself. We're losing power. Estelle groaned, her hand flying to her injured side. What's happening? Engine failure. I'm trying to compensate. He fought to maintain control as the vehicle shuddered, its trajectory plummeting. The desolate landscape of the nearby planet rushed up to meet them. He aimed for a relatively flat expanse of ochre-colored sand, bracing for impact. The crash was brutal. Metal screamed, safety harnesses strained, and dust billowed as the vehicle slammed into the ground, throwing them both forward. Silence descended, broken only by the hiss of escaping air and Estelle's pained breaths. Kyle, dazed, unbuckled himself and turned to her. "Estelle, are you all right?" She winced, clutching her side. I think so, just jostled, but the impact, it's made it worse." Kyle quickly assessed the damage. The vehicle was a wreck, its frame twisted and groaning. "Damn it, we're stranded." He rummaged through the wreckage, finding a first aid kit. It was meager, but it was something. "I need to find something to stabilize you." He scavenged what he could, ripped metal serving as a splint, and some old cloth to act as a bandage. This will have to do for now. As he dug deeper into the mangled remains of the vehicle, his hand brushed against something unexpected. A panel slightly ajar. He pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, nestled amongst wires and dust, was a deactivated distress signal beacon. What the? He examined it closely. It was an old model deliberately disabled, but the components seemed intact. A spark of hope ignited within him. He could fix this. He had to. Hours later, after painstaking work, splicing wires and rerouting power, the beacon flickered to life. He ignored the blinking warning light indicating his wanted status. Desperate times. He sent out a short, coded message, pleading for rescue, and broadcasted it into the void. The response came sooner than expected. A distorted voice crackled over the comms. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Iron Rat vessel Scavenger's Claw. State your business." Kyle hesitated. The Iron Rats, a notorious group of scavengers known for their ruthless tactics and disregard for Galactic Council laws, but he had no choice. "This is a mining vehicle registration. Damaged, we've crashed. We require assistance." Crashed location. He gave them the coordinates. A long silence followed. Then a gruff laugh. "We're on our way, but be warned, little miners. The Iron Rats don't work for free." The Scavenger's Claw was a hulking patchwork vessel, cobbled together from salvaged parts and filled with weaponry. As they approached, Kyle could make out the figures on the deck. A motley crew of aliens, their faces hardened by hardship and greed. The leader, a massive Krogan-like being with scarred tusks and cybernetic implants, lumbered down the ramp. "Crag," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "I am Crag, and you are stranded." His eyes scanned the wreckage, calculating its worth. "Not much to salvage here, mostly scrap." "We need help," Kyle insisted. "My colleague is injured." Crag glanced at Estelle, then back at Kyle. "Medical aid is expensive, so is ship repair." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "But you have a certain look about you, human, a knowledge. Tell me, miner, do you know anything about ancient technology?" Kyle's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Crag grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "My crew found something interesting on that derelict research station. Navigation codes, human codes. We can't decipher them. You help us, we help you. Medical aid, ship repairs. A deal." Kyle glanced at Estelle. She gave him a subtle nod. They were in no position to refuse. "What kind of codes?" "Navigation charts. Said to lead to a hidden cache. A valuable one." Crag's gaze was intense. "So do we have a deal, human?" "We have a deal," Kyle said, his voice tight. He knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. Days turned into weeks. Kyle pored over the navigation codes in a dimly lit corner of the scavenger's claw, the alien symbols swimming before his eyes. He translated, he interpreted, but he also subtly manipulated. He planted a miniature tracking device on Crag's personal transport, hidden within a power conduit. He didn't trust Crag any further than he could throw him. The codes led to a secluded area on the research station, a hidden cache containing valuable resources, including a rare power cell, exactly what they needed to repair the mining vehicle. But it also contained something far more dangerous: schematics for the seed vault failsafe system. While Kyle worked with Crag, Estelle used her medical expertise to tend to the injured and ailing members of the Iron Rats. She cleaned wounds, set broken bones, and offered comfort where she could. She listened to their stories, their grievances, their doubts about Crag's leadership. She was planting seeds, subtle seeds of dissent. One evening, Kyle overheard Crag speaking in hushed tones to one of his lieutenants. "Valerius will pay a fortune for those schematics. The seed vault failsafe. That's power, real power." Kyle's blood ran cold. Valerius, a notorious black market dealer known for his ruthlessness and his insatiable hunger for power. Crag wasn't just interested in the cash, he was planning to sell the schematics, and that meant Estelle was in danger. He found her tending to a wounded Grathian in the makeshift infirmary. "Estelle, we need to leave, now." She looked up, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong?" "Crag, he's planning to sell the seed vault failsafe schematics to Valerius. He's going to double-cross us. We need to get out of here before he does." Estelle's eyes widened. "What about the vehicle?" "It's almost ready, but we have to move fast. I'll prep the ship. Can you cause a distraction?" Estelle smiled grimly. "I think I know just the people." While Crag was busy preparing for his meeting with Valerius, Estelle rallied the Iron Rats who had grown sympathetic to her. She spoke of Crag's greed, his disregard for their well-being, his plans to abandon them once he had the schematics. Her words struck a chord. A small-scale mutiny erupted, a chaotic brawl in the main hangar bay, drawing Crag's attention. Kyle, meanwhile, raced to the repaired mining vehicle. He powered up the engines, the familiar hum a welcome sound. Estelle arrived moments later, breathless but triumphant. "Let's get out of here." They launched, the mining vehicle straining against gravity, but Crag was not easily fooled. His ship, the Scavenger's Claw, roared to life, its weapon systems locking onto their trajectory. "He's coming after us," Estelle shouted. "Hold on," Kyle yelled back. The chase was on. Kyle navigated the mining vehicle through the desolate landscape, dodging laser fire and missile barrages. He knew this planet, knew its hidden canyons and treacherous terrain. There, the energy-dampening canyons. Estelle pointed. Kyle grinned. "Perfect." He steered the mining vehicle into a narrow canyon, the walls lined with strange, crystalline formations. As they plunged deeper, the energy-dampening crystals began to interfere with the weapon systems of both vehicles. Laser fire sputtered and died, missile guidance systems went haywire. Crag cursed, his ship struggling to maintain its pursuit. "I'll tear you out of the sky, human." Kyle weaved through the treacherous canyon, using his knowledge of the terrain to evade Crag's attacks. The mining vehicle bucked and swayed, its engines groaning under the strain. As they emerged from the canyons, a lucky shot from Crag's ship struck the mining vehicle's engine. The vehicle shuddered violently, smoke pouring from its damaged hull. "We're hit," Estelle cried. "We're losing power. Eject," Kyle shouted, slamming his hand on the release lever. The escape pods launched, rocketing away from the crippled mining vehicle. As they soared through the air, Kyle watched as the Scavenger's Claw circled overhead, a predator circling its wounded prey. The mining vehicle, along with the schematics, lay in pieces. The escape pods continued their descent, leaving the fate of both the schematics and themselves unknown. The pod shuddered violently, metal screaming against unseen obstacles before slamming to a halt. Acrid smoke filled the cramped space, stinging Kyle's eyes and throat. He coughed, fumbling for the emergency release. The hatch hissed open, revealing a landscape choked with rust-colored dust and the skeletal remains of towering machinery. Acid rain pattered against the pod's hull, hissing as it ate into the metal. The air tasted of sulfur and decay. He was near a refinery, or what was left of one. Girders twisted like broken bones against a sky the color of bruised plums. A glance at the shattered comm panel confirmed his fears, offline, but the survival kit was intact. He worked quickly, his movements precise and efficient despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Multi-tool check, basic rations check, radiation suit. Essential. He sealed the suit, the recycled air a small comfort against the oppressive atmosphere. Estelle's landing had been no less brutal. Her pod had plowed into the edge of a shantytown, a festering collection of corrugated metal and scavenged plasteel clinging to the side of a slag heap that stretched towards the horizon like a metallic mountain range. The air here was thick with the stench of burning chemicals and unwashed bodies. She groaned, pain lancing through her leg. The pod's emergency beacon was dead. As her vision cleared, she saw figures approaching, their faces obscured by rags and respirators. They were thin, their eyes wary and hard, scavengers. They dragged her from the wreckage, their touch rough and impersonal. Her leg throbbed with each movement. They spoke in guttural whispers, a dialect she barely recognized. She tried to speak, to explain, but her words were met with suspicion. The scavengers took her to their settlement, a maze of narrow alleyways and makeshift shelters. Inside a dimly lit shack, a woman with a stern face and eyes that seemed to bore into her soul examined her injuries. This was Rena, their leader. "Outsider," Rena rasped, her voice hoarse. "What do you want?" Estelle coughed, her throat raw. We crashed. We need help." Rena's lips curled into a cynical smile. "Help is a luxury we cannot afford. Information, however, that has value." Hours later, Kyle reached the edge of the shantytown, guided by the distant glow of makeshift fires and the stench of the refinery. The scavengers were waiting for him, their faces grim. They surrounded him, weapons drawn, crude but effective-looking spears and electro-prods. "Halt!" one of them shouted, his voice muffled by a respirator. "State your business." Kyle stopped, raising his hand slowly. "I'm looking for a friend. Her escape pod crashed nearby." "No one comes here looking for friends," another scavenger snarled. Before the situation could escalate, a voice cut through the tension. "Kyle, it's me, Estelle." The scavengers parted, revealing Estelle leaning against a support beam, her face pale but relieved. Rena stepped forward, her gaze shifting between Kyle and Estelle. "You know this. Outsider." Estelle nodded weakly. "He's with me. We were traveling together." She explained their mission, Crag and the escape pods, omitting the details about humanity's past. Rena listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Estelle finished, she sighed. This planet, it was once a jewel. Factories stretched across the horizon, producing technology for the entire sector. She spat on the ground, the acid eating into the metal. Now, it's Valerius's personal scrap heap. He milks the resources dry and grinds anyone who resists into dust. Valerius? Kyle asked. "He controls everything," Rena said, her voice filled with bitterness. "And I heard your friend Crag was captured shortly after the escape pods launched. Valerius's forces took him to the Citadel." The Citadel. The thought sent a chill down Kyle's spine. It was Valerius's fortress, a heavily guarded complex rumored to be impenetrable. The schematics, they're with Crag. Rena nodded grimly. Likely, Valerius hoards anything of value. Kyle's mind raced. He had to get those schematics back. "I have to get into the Citadel." Rena laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Suicide. No one gets in, no one gets out." "Then we'll find a way," Kyle said, his voice firm. "I can offer you technology. Weapons, enough to make a real difference for your people." Rena's eyes narrowed, considering. The Citadel, it's more than just walls and guards, it's a fortress, but she paused, her gaze drifting towards the slag heap. "There are tunnels, Old service tunnels that run beneath the city, dangerous, forgot, but they might be our only chance. Estelle, despite her pain, spoke up. The city's infrastructure. I analyzed some of the schematics before we crashed. The tunnels connect to various levels of the citadel. Rena looked at Estelle, then back at Kyle. All right, outsider, I'll help you, but know this, I expect to be paid in more than just promises. Hours later, Rena led Kyle and Estelle into the darkness beneath the shantytown. The tunnels were narrow and claustrophobic, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something else. Something acrid and unsettling. Water dripped from the ceiling, hissing as it landed on the corroded metal floor. Stay close, Rena warned, her voice echoing in the confined space. These tunnels aren't abandoned. Valerius's waste. It mutates things. They hadn't gone far when they heard it, a skittering sound followed by a low growl. Rena raised her weapon, a crude but effective-looking energy pistol. Two glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. The creature lunged, a grotesque parody of a rodent, its skin blistered and raw, its teeth elongated into razor-sharp fangs. Rena fired, the energy blast vaporizing the creature in a flash of light. Just a taste of what's to come, she said grimly. Deeper into the tunnels, they discovered a hidden chamber, a forgotten armory. Plasma rifles, energy shields, and grenades lay stacked against the walls, relics of a failed rebellion against Valerius. Jackpot, Kyle muttered, hefting a plasma rifle. It felt good in his hands. As they neared the citadel, the tunnels became more unstable, the walls crumbling and the air thick with toxic fumes. Finally, they reached a sealed access point, a reinforced plasteel door leading directly into the citadel's lower levels. This is it, Rena said, her voice tense. Beyond this door, there's no turning back. As Kyle worked to breach the door, a warning klaxon blared through the tunnels. Red lights flashed. Ambush, Estelle shouted. Before they could react, a squad of Valerius's security forces emerged from the shadows, led by a hulking cyborg enforcer, its metal body gleaming in the harsh light. We've been expecting you, the cyborg growled, its voice a synthesized monotone. The firefight was brutal and chaotic. Plasma fire ripped through the tunnels, ricocheting off the walls. Estelle, weakened by her injuries, was quickly overwhelmed. Kyle, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, fought with a ferocity he didn't know he possessed. He managed to take down several guards, but the cyborg was relentless. Finally, with a desperate burst of energy, Kyle fired a plasma blast directly into the cyborg's chest, overloading its systems. The cyborg exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. But as the smoke cleared, Kyle saw Rena standing over Estelle, a stun baton crackling in her hand. Estelle lay unconscious on the ground. "Rena, what are you doing?" Kyle demanded, lowering his rifle. Rena's face was a mask of conflicted emotions. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling, "but I have to. Valerius. He promised me freedom for my people. You're betraying us," Kyle asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Rena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I had no choice." She activated the stun baton, aiming it at Kyle. "Don't make me do this." Kyle hesitated for a moment, then dove for cover as the baton discharged. He scrambled back through the doorway, the plasteel door slamming shut behind him. He was trapped, alone, inside Valerius's citadel, with nothing but a plasma rifle and a burning desire for revenge. And to save Estelle. The camera whirred softly, its optical sensor pivoting in a predictable arc. Kyle, pressed against the cold plasteel wall, waited for the precise moment. His multi-tool, humming with barely suppressed energy, extended a delicate probe. A flicker of blue light, a barely audible click, and the camera's lens went dark. Automated security. Predictable, almost. Insulting. He moved on, deeper into the citadel's labyrinthine corridors. He found it tucked away behind a ventilation shaft, a narrow opening leading into a network of maintenance tunnels. The air within was thick with the scent of ozone and stale coolant. Dampness clung to the walls, and the only light came from the faint glow strips running along the tunnel's spine. Perfect. Heavily guarded areas were useless if he could simply bypass them. The tunnels twisted and turned, a maze of conduits and access panels. Finally, he reached a junction, a small alcove with a flickering terminal embedded in the wall. He ran a diagnostic, bypassing the login protocols with practiced ease. The screen flickered to life, displaying lines of complex code and data streams. Minutes blurred as he sifted through the information, filtering out the irrelevant noise. Then he found it, a series of reports detailing the extraction of a rare mineral xylose from the planet's core. The reports specified its destination, not research, not manufacturing, but weapons development. The Galactic Council. A chill ran down his spine. Xylose wasn't just rare, it was volatile, capable of generating energy levels previously thought impossible to weaponize it. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit chamber carved into the rock, Estelle groaned, her head throbbing. She sat up, her wrists chafing against the rough synth cords binding them to a crude chair. Rena stood nearby, her face etched with a mixture of guilt and defiance. Why, Rena? Why did you do this? Estelle's voice was raw with betrayal. Rena avoided her gaze. I was promised freedom for my people, Estelle. Valerius said he would ensure their safety, their prosperity. She finally looked up, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for understanding. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing, Estelle scoffed, by handing us over to Valerius. By condemning us to whatever twisted fate he has planned. Rena's shoulders slumped. I didn't know it would be like this. He said you were a threat to galactic stability, that you were spreading dangerous ideas. She paused, her voice cracking. He lied. Rena began to sob. He's enslaving my people, Estelle, forcing them to mine xylose. They're sick, dying. The mineral is poisoning them. Back in the Citadel's underbelly, Kyle heard voices, muffled, angry voices. He pressed himself against the tunnel wall, listening. The voices grew louder, resolving into distinct words. He peered around a corner and saw them. A group of miners, huddled together in a small chamber, their faces gaunt and weary. They were speaking in hushed tones, their language a guttural mix of clicks and whistles. Can't go on like this, one of them hissed. Valerius takes everything, leaves us nothing. Rebellion is the only way. Another replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Kyle stepped into the chamber. The miners startled, their hands instinctively reaching for the crude mining tools they carried. I heard you, Kyle said, his voice calm. I know what Valerius is doing, I can help. Suspicion clouded their faces. One of the miners, a hulking figure with a network of scars crisscrossing his face, stepped forward. Who are you? Why should we trust you? Kyle met his gaze. I'm here to stop Valerius, and I believe we share a common goal. He pulled a ration pack from his belt and tossed it to the miner. Eat. We have much to discuss. He then pulled out his multi-tool. These mining lasers are crude, but with a few modifications. He began, showing them how to rewire the power cells and focus the energy into a more concentrated beam. In Rena's hideout, Estelle continued her appeal. Your Honor, Rena, it is not too late. You can correct your mistake. Help us to escape. Help us stop Valerius. Rena hung her head. I don't know if I can. He has eyes everywhere. Then we'll be his blind spot, Estelle countered, her voice firm. You know the tunnels, the security protocols. You know how to get us out of here and disable the Citadel systems. Rena looked up, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. And then what? Then we fight, Estelle said, her voice resolute. We fight for your people. We fight for the truth. Outside, the fuel depot exploded in a blinding flash of light. The ground trembled and alarms blared throughout the Citadel. Kyle, leading the miners, watched as Valerius's security forces scrambled to respond. Now, he shouted, let's give them something to remember us by. Meanwhile, Estelle and Rena, guided by Rena's intimate knowledge of the tunnels, moved swiftly through the Citadel's underbelly. They reached a service hatch leading directly into Valerius's command center. Rena bypassed the electronic lock and they slipped inside, unnoticed amidst the chaos of the explosion. Kyle finally reached the schematics vault. The door hissed open, revealing a small chamber. In the center stood a robotic sentry, its metallic body gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was heavily armed, equipped with energy cannons and missile launchers. Its optical sensors locked onto Kyle and a synthesized voice boomed. "Intruder detected. Prepare to be neutralized." Kyle didn't hesitate. He hurled a handful of modified mining charges at the sentry, then dove for cover. The charges detonated, showering the sentry with sparks and disabling its targeting systems. The sentry, momentarily disoriented, staggered backward. Kyle, using the distraction, activated his multi-tool, targeting the sentry's power core. With a final surge of energy, he overloaded the system. The sentry shuddered, its lights flickered, and it crashed to the ground in a heap of smoking metal. But the schematics vault was empty. Only a single data slate sat on the central pedestal. Kyle grabbed it. As he did, a hidden message appeared on the terminal screen. "Crag has been moved. Destination off-world." As Kyle discovered Crag was off-world, Estelle and Rena found themselves in a much more dire situation. They had been captured. Valerius stood before them, his face a mask of cold fury. "I knew you would try something foolish," he sneered. "Did you really think you could outsmart me?" He gestured to two guards who tightened the restraints binding Estelle and Rena to a pair of ornate plasteel pillars. "I will make an example of you, a public execution. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Galactic Council." As Valerius spoke, a tremor ran through the Citadel. Alarms blared. The miners had launched their rebellion. Kyle, schematics in hand, burst into the execution chamber. The scene that greeted him was horrific. Estelle and Rena were bound to pillars, their faces pale with fear. Valerius stood before them, a smug look on his face. "You're too late, human," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I think not," Kyle replied, raising his multi-tool. Valerius chuckled. "You think you can stop me? I have modified Crag. It is now a weapon ready to be deployed at the Galactic Council, and these two," he gestured to Estelle and Rena, "they are wired to overload. One wrong move and we all die." The Citadel lurched again, metal groaning under some unseen pressure. Kyle didn't wait. He ripped a smoke grenade from his belt, yanking the pin and hurling it towards Valerius. A thick, acrid cloud billowed outwards, choking the air, obscuring the overseer and his guards in a swirling gray fog. Coughing erupted around them. Kyle, already moving, activated his multi-tool, its interface flashing with lines of code. He targeted Valerius's energy pistol, overriding its safety protocols with a series of rapid commands. The weapon sputtered, then went dead with a soft click. The miners, a wave of pent-up fury unleashed, surged forward. Picks and shovels became weapons, swinging in wide arcs, connecting with the guards' armor with dull thuds. Shouts and cries filled the smoke-filled chamber. The air crackled with desperate energy. Estelle, freed from her restraints by a quick slice of Kyle's multi-tool, grabbed a discarded energy rifle. Rena, however, surprised them all. She moved with a fluid grace that belied her slight frame, disarming a guard with a swift kick to the wrist, then using his own stun baton against him. Her movements were precise, economical, lethal. A warrior hidden beneath a gentle exterior. Valerius, cursing, stumbled back, his face contorted with rage. He banged his head against a control panel, activating a series of flashing lights and blaring sirens. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," a cold, synthetic voice announced. "Citadel will be rendered inert in T-5 minutes." The floor vibrated violently. Kyle grabbed Estelle and Rena. "Move, now!" They plunged into the chaotic corridors, explosions rocking the Citadel around them. Metal twisted and buckled, sparks showering down from severed cables. The air grew thick with the smell of burning plastic and ozone. A section of the tunnel collapsed ahead, a wall of rubble blocking their path. Trapped behind it, Kyle could hear the desperate cries of miners. "We have to help them," he said, his voice firm. "Kyle, we don't have time." Estelle protested, glancing at the timer flashing on her wrist. "We make time," he retorted, already scanning the collapsed section with his multi-tool. "There's a mining laser schematic here. I can reroute power." He worked quickly, his fingers flying across the interface, rerouting energy conduits, bypassing damaged circuits. The laser sputtered, then hummed to life, its beam cutting through the rubble with a high-pitched whine. The trapped miners scrambled free, coughing and covered in dust, but alive. They reached the surface amidst the chaos of the miners' rebellion. The citadel, once a symbol of Valerius's power, was now a smoking ruin. Miners armed with salvaged weapons and sheer tenacity fought against Valerius's remaining forces. A miner, his face blackened with soot, lay dying near the transport bay. He reached out, grabbing Kyle's arm. "Thank you," he rasped, "for saving us." "Crag," they moved him, to the research facility, on the moon. His eyes glazed over. Estelle watched the scene unfold, the miner's bravery and sacrifice etched onto her face. A new understanding dawned in her eyes, a recognition of humanity's resilience, its capacity for compassion even in the face of overwhelming odds. Kyle, Estelle, and Rena commandeered a small transport ship, blasting their way through the remaining security drones. As they soared into the sky heading towards the moon, Kyle pulled up the schematics on the ship's console. "Valerius modified Crag," he explained, pointing to a complex diagram. "This device. It will amplify his powers exponentially. He'll become uncontrollable." Estelle frowned. "But what's powering it? The energy signature is masked." "The mineral," Rena said, her voice tight with anger. "The one they were mining here. It's a key component. It makes the amplification untraceable. It's also deadly to my people," she added, her eyes flashing. "The Galactic Council knew. They turned a blind eye to our suffering to profit from our death." Kyle zoomed in on a seemingly insignificant section of the schematic. "There's a hidden message here," he muttered, his eyes widening. He decrypted the code, revealing a series of encrypted coordinates and a single sentence: "Containment protocol initiated." The Galactic Council, they knew about Valerius's plan all along. They're complicit in this. They want Crag eliminated. Estelle stared at the screen, her face pale. "The Council. But they're supposed to protect us, to uphold galactic law." Her voice was barely a whisper. Kyle sighed. "Maybe they're just protecting their own interests. I have a theory about humanity's past and the long-term effect it had on galactic politics. Maybe Crag represents a threat to that status quo." They fell silent, the weight of the revelation heavy in the air. The transport ship approached the moon, the research facility looming large in the distance, heavily guarded by Valerius's forces. Kyle began outlining a plan of attack. The research facility loomed, a metallic scar against the pale lunar landscape. Rena, her eyes reflecting the dim starlight, led the way through a network of narrow canyons, her movements fluid and silent. "The perimeter defenses are concentrated on the main entrance," she whispered, her voice raspy. "This route avoids most of the sensors, but it's not without risk." The air was frigid, biting at exposed skin, and the facility hummed with a low, menacing thrum. Inside, they found Crag strapped to a massive device, its crystalline components glowing with an unnatural light. Valerius stood before him, his face illuminated by the device's eerie luminescence. "Ah, our uninvited guests," Valerius sneered, turning to face them. "I commend your tenacity, but you're too late. The amplification is almost complete." He gestured toward Crag. "Soon, his rage will be unleashed upon the Galactic Council, shattering their fragile alliance and restoring the old order, an order where strength dictates destiny, and the weak are rightfully subjugated." His eyes burned with fanaticism, a stark contrast to the measured calm he usually projected. An order where the strong rule, unconcerned with long-term consequences. Rena, her brow furrowed, focused on the device. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she extended a hand toward the crystalline structure, her fingers trembling. The mineral, it's resonating with me, she gasped, her voice strained. I can feel its energy, its toxicity, but I can also disrupt it. Despite the obvious pain etched on her face, she focused, and the crystalline components flickered erratically. Kyle, seizing the opportunity, pulled out his multi-tool. The device, a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability, whirred to life. He targeted the power conduits, inputting a rapid sequence of commands. Sparks flew as the flow of energy became unstable, creating a window of opportunity. Estelle, her eyes filled with commitment, rushed forward, bypassing the remaining guards. She reached Crag, her fingers flying across the restraints. "Crag, it's me, Estelle," she said, her voice calm and soothing. "I'm here to help you." Freed from the device, Crag roared, his eyes wild with confusion and pain. He lashed out blindly, his massive hand nearly striking Estelle, but she stood her ground, her voice unwavering. "Crag, listen to me," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You're safe now. You're free." Estelle touched his arm, focusing on the specific pressure points she had learned from studying his physiology. Slowly, Crag's rage subsided, replaced by confusion and exhaustion. Valerius, his face contorted with fury, lunged toward them, an energy blade materializing in his hand. But Rena intercepted him, her movements surprisingly swift and powerful. She channeled her rage, her grief, her willpower into each blow, fueled by the memory of her people's suffering. With a final, desperate strike, she disarmed Valerius, sending him crashing to the ground, defeated. Estelle, ignoring Valerius, activated her comm device. "This is Estelle," she said, her voice clear and resolute. "I have irrefutable evidence of the Galactic Council's complicity in Valerius's plan. I am transmitting the data to a secure channel for immediate dissemination." Chaos erupted within the Galactic Council. Accusations flew, alliances crumbled, and several members were immediately arrested, their faces etched with fear and betrayal. The carefully constructed facade of unity shattered, revealing the corruption and greed that lay beneath. Kyle, watching the events unfold, felt a tremor of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But also a familiar temptation. He glanced at the data logs. He had secretly compiled the truth about humanity's past dominance, their technological prowess, their ancient empire. Releasing this information now would undoubtedly throw the galaxy into further chaos, but it could also pave the way for humanity's resurgence, their return to power. He looked at Estelle, at Rena, at Crag. He saw their faces, etched with purpose, with hope, with a shared desire for a better future. He saw the fragile threads of unity that were beginning to weave themselves together, despite the corruption and the chaos. Kyle took a deep breath and made his decision. He deleted the data logs, erasing the evidence of humanity's past glory. "It's done," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not going to release it." Estelle turned to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "Are you sure, Kyle? This could change everything." "I am," he said. "Revealing it would undermine everything we've worked for. It would shatter the progress we've made toward galactic unity. We need to let go of the past and embrace our role as silent helpers." Estelle nodded, her respect for Kyle deepening. "Then I know what I must do." Moments later, Estelle stood before the galactic holonet, her image broadcast throughout the galaxy. "I am resigning from my position on the Galactic Council," she announced, her voice resonating with conviction. "I can no longer serve an institution that has become so deeply corrupted. I condemn its actions and I call for immediate and sweeping reform." Crag, his strength returning, approached Estelle and Kyle. "I saw what you did," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You could have taken everything for yourselves, but you chose to help others. I will use my abilities to help those who have been exploited, to protect the weak from the strong." The final scene showed Kyle and Estelle standing on a balcony overlooking a bustling galactic city. The sky was filled with ships from 100 different worlds, a testament to the resilience of galactic civilization. The future was uncertain, but there was hope in the air, a hope born of sacrifice, of understanding, and of a shared commitment to building a better future. Estelle turned to Kyle, her eyes filled with warmth. "Thank you, Kyle," she said, her voice soft, "for everything, for showing me the truth, for giving me hope, for being family." Kyle smiled, taking her hand. "The feeling is mutual, Estelle. We're family now, always." He squeezed her hand gently, a profound sense of peace settling over him.